On November 6, 1801, the Tennessee General Assembly enacted Chapter 48 of the Acts of Tennessee, which carved Jackson County out of the eastern portion of Smith County and adjacent Indian lands. That legislation fixed new county boundaries along the very ridges and hollows, including the limestone crest lines known today as Seven Knobs. From that moment, Seven Knobs ceased to be a remote landmark on the frontier and became an integral high ground within the newly created Jackson County. Long before surveyors laid out the town of Gainsborough, whose 40 acres were deeded by David Cox and incorporated in 1820, the limestone crests of Seven Knobs lay astride indigenous roots and buffalo trails, whispering of a wild landscape unbroken by fences. In the waning years of the 18th century, Fort Blount on the Cumberland River became a key stop along the Cumberland Trace, its sentries using the ridge's silhouette as a natural beacon amid the fog-shrouded hollows. By the time the first courts met at John Bowen's cabin on Roaring River in 1803, Seven Knobs had already witnessed the slow tide of settlers, traders, and riverboats molding the contours of Jackson County. Histories that survived even when a devastating courthouse fire in 1872 consumed a majority of those early records, leaving the Knobs themselves as the keepers of their own story. A century later, after Jackson County was formed along these ridges, Seven Knobs became the stage for a historical battle between the families of James Randolph Ramsey and William M. Hensley. On the evening of February 1, 1909, William M. Hensley, commonly known as Bill, arrived at the residence of Jenny Randolph Ramsey in response to a troubling report concerning his daughter, Almedia Frances Hensley. Bill had received word that Almedia had taken her own life by hanging. Upon arrival, however, he was met at the gate by Jessie Ramsey and soon discovered the report to be false. Almedia appeared on the porch unharmed, accompanied by her sister Betty. The visit quickly turned confrontational. Bill accused Jimmy Ramsey, Almedia's husband, of abusive behavior and held him responsible for the death of his other daughter, Polly Hensley, who had been Jimmy's first wife. Bill claimed that Polly had died the previous year due to emotional distress caused by Jimmy's treatment, described by Bill as having worried her to death. Jimmy was reportedly present during the encounter and witnessed Bill draw a pistol. According to Bill's account, Jessie Ramsey then threatened to pull him off his mule and stamp him. In the aftermath of the incident, Jessie filed a warrant for Bill Hensley's arrest. Legal proceedings followed, and a trial was held 3 weeks later. February 20th, 1909, the trial of William M. Hensley was convened at the home of Esquire Marion Bullington, located near Blackburn's Fork. The proceedings stemmed from a violent altercation that had occurred earlier that month involving members of the Hensley and Ramsey families. In the account of Bill Hensley, he stated, "Jessie Ramsey, the one that was prosecuting me, was the first witness in the case, and he stated that I had a pistol that I drew it on him. Then Jimmy Ramsey, my son-in-law, was the next witness, and he stated about my having a pistol at his house on the occasion for which I was being tried. And I asked him to be positive about this matter of seeing me have a pistol, and I said, 'Jimmy, you know that's a lie.' I said a word that I ought not to have said. That is, I told him, 'You know that's a lie.' Jimmy said, 'What did you say?' I repeated it, saying, 'You know that's a lie.' Then Jimmy rose up with his knife, and I said, 'Let's have peace.' After I gave Jimmy the lie, the first time he sat back down, or started to sit down, and after I gave him the lie again, one of the justices of the peace got a hold of him, and he attempted to make him sit down. I did not think any more for giving him the lie or saying anything to him that I would one of my own sons. I told him to sit down, that I did not want any trouble, that I wanted them all to keep quiet and let's have peace. The old man, James Ramsey, Jimmy, Jesse, and Marvin Ramsey were all around me and made a rush on me, and someone stabbed me, but I do not know which one it was. I was cut in the back twice there, and once later on, cut across the forehead, and my left ear was nearly cut off, one cut place on my thigh, and one on the forearm. Willie Ramsey cut me across the head and ear with a razor, as I thought. This was in the main room where the fight started. I was not doing anything when the fight begun, but asking for peace. I do not know which one cut me first, but Lloyd Ramsey was in there. We were in the south room, and they pushed me back into the kitchen, the room east of the room in which the trial was had. When the fight started, I was in the house and could not tell just how the fight started, more than I have told, except the Ramsey boys rushed on me. My boys did not do anything at all until the Ramseys cut me up. When they pushed me back into the kitchen, some of my boys got them off of me, and the Ramseys went out of the house some one way and some another, some out at the kitchen door, and some went through the house and out at the front door. When I got out of the house, Lloyd Ramsey was shooting, and he shot Cy Hensley, one of my boys. Lloyd shot Cy as he passed by him. Cy had nothing in his hands that I saw. Jesse Ramsey had hold of him with his arms locked around him. Lloyd Ramsey shot 2 or 3 times and then put his pistol right up against him and shot him. He was shot in the left side about the 3rd rib. Then Lloyd came back further up the road and shot John T. Hensley, and then I got a pole there in the woodpile and ran Lloyd Ramsey off. The pole was 5 or 6 feet long. I went down about the forks of the road and knocked old man Jimmy Ramsey down. I just struck him a light lick. Then I went about 10 steps further down the road and knocked Jesse Ramsey down. As I went back up the road, Mrs. James Ramsey was holding Mr. Ramsey's head in her lap. Silas was cut in the house. I did not see who did it, nor did I see when it was done. Noah Hensley did have a pistol. I saw Lloyd Ramsey go out at the back door. Me and Dave Hensley and John T. Hensley were in the kitchen. Some of the cutting was done in the front room where the trial was being had. Willie had cut me in the kitchen, and Willie and Marvin Ramsey were cutting John T., and I told Dave Hensley to throw them off. When I got out, they were all engaged in a general fight. Noah, Cy, John T., Ben, Teak, and myself were engaged in the difficulty. In the aftermath of the fight, Dr. S.B. Fowler was sent for. His recollection states, "I got to the place of the trouble about 2 hours after the fight. Then I went to Esquire Bullington's, where I found the Hensleys. I waited on the Hensleys when they were hurt in the fight with the Ramseys. Cy Hensley was shot in the left side, about the 3rd rib, and the shot ranged downward and lodged about the right hip. He had a stab in the right lung and had a stab at the upper part of the stomach. I do not remember, but I think that the stab just above the stomach healed all right, the one in the right lung being considerable trouble. He took stramatic pneumonia caused by the wounds. I did not think the shot wound at the time was serious, but after he recovered from the fever, an abscess formed about the bullet, and after an operation was performed for this, he could never revive from the shock of the operation. I think the wound was the principal cause of his death." Bill Hensley was cut on the ear, across the head, stabbed in the back, was cut on the thigh, and was stabbed in the middle of the back. Teak was cut on the throat, and John T. was shot and cut on the throat, but not so bad as Teak. Ben was shot kinda on top of the head, just through the skin his hair was burned. Or he said it was. I noticed the hair was a little short on the back of the head. The gunshot wound on Cy Hensley caused the most trouble, and I think it caused his death. The other wounds were not necessarily fatal. I waited on the Ramseys, going there before I went to Hensley's. I found Jesse Ramsey in a very serious condition. He was cut in the right side to the hollow, a place about as wide as my hand. I noticed that the blood was clotted in the wound and knew that it must come out, so I just ran my hand in the wound up to the knuckles. This wound was very serious. He was shot through the arm and cut on the side of the neck, stabbed in the right lung, cut on the wrist, and struck over the head. Jimmy Ramsey was cut about the waistband of his pants. Old Mr. Ramsey was struck over the head, which caused concussion of the brain, and blood ran from his ears. Headline: Old Tennessee Feud Breaks Out 2 Shot. Judge Ramsey of Oklahoma learns Hensleys have taken the warpath again. Sulphur, Oklahoma, April 9th. Colonel J.D. Ramsey, a capitalist of the city and owner of much realty in Lawton, his former home, received a wire today stating that the old feud between his family and the Hensleys of Jackson County, Tennessee, has broken out again, and that his uncle, James Ramsey, and 2 cousins, Jimmy and Jesse Ramsey, were wounded dangerously in a desperate battle fought with the Hensleys. One of the Hensleys is reported dead, and other members of the family and several of their friends wounded. Colonel Ramsey, joined by his brother, J.M. Ramsey of Oklahoma, have oiled up their guns and will leave tonight for Gainesboro, Tennessee, near which place his feudist relatives fought. Fortunately, no new hostilities occurred, and a truce was declared with both families agreeing not to prosecute. The truce was violated by the Hensleys, and the Ramsey brothers were charged. Caption: Wednesday morning, July 7th, 1909. Court met pursuant to adjournment. Present and presiding the Honorable J.M. Gardenhire, Judge. When the following proceedings were had: indictment. The grand jury returned into open court in a body the following indictment, to wit: 1 indictment against Lloyd Ramsey, Jimmy Ramsey, and Jesse Ramsey for murder, which is in the words and figures following, to wit: State of Tennessee, Jackson County Criminal Court for said county, July term, 1909. The grand jurors for the state of Tennessee, upon their oath present that Lloyd Ramsey, Jimmy Ramsey, and Jesse Ramsey, on the 20th day of February 1909, in the county and state aforesaid, did unlawfully, feloniously, willfully, maliciously, deliberately, premeditatedly, and of their malice or forethought, assault, shoot, cut, stab, wound and kill one Silas D. Hensley, and did so commit murder in the first degree against the peace and dignity of the state. Caption: Saturday morning, July 16th, 1910. Court met pursuant to adjournment. Present and presiding the Honorable J.M. Gardenhire, Judge, when the following proceedings were had and ordered entered of record, to wit: verdict of jury, judgment of court, State of Tennessee versus Lloyd Ramsey, Jesse Ramsey, Jimmy Ramsey murder in first degree. Came the Attorney General for the state, and the defendants in proper person and by attorneys came also the same jury heretofore elected, impaneled and sworn, in this case on a former day of this term, in charge of their sworn officers, Charlie Locke, Rhea Roberts, and H.J. Lynch, who after due consideration do say upon their oath that they find the defendants, and each of them guilty of voluntary manslaughter, as charged in the indictment, and fixes their punishment at confinement in the penitentiary of the state for a period of 4 years each. Thereupon defendants moved the court in arrest of judgment, which motion was likewise overruled by the court. It is therefore the judgment of the court that defendants, Lloyd Ramsey, Jesse Ramsey, and Jimmy Ramsey, for such their offense shall be confined at hard labor in the penitentiary of the state for a period of 4 years from this date, in accordance with the finding of the jury in this case, and that they pay the costs of this prosecution, for which execution will issue. To all of the foregoing action, and to the verdict and judgment of the court, defendants accepted at the time, and now accept and pray and appeal to the next term of the Supreme Court at Nashville, Tennessee, which to them is granted, and for satisfactory reasons appearing to the court, defendants are given 30 days from this date to prepare and file their bill of exceptions in this case. Defendants and each of them will stand on their present recognizances for their personal appearance before said Supreme Court to be held at Nashville, Tennessee, on the first Monday in December 1910, to answer the state of Tennessee on a charge of murder, and do not depart without leave of the court. Unfortunately for the three Ramsey brothers, the Supreme Court upheld the ruling of the lower court. In the pardon record of Jesse Ramsey, Governor Hooper has written that he was a participant in what Justice Grafton Greene of the Supreme Court has described as the biggest battle fought in Tennessee since the Civil War. According to the record, Jesse, James, and Lloyd Ramsey, aged respectively 25, 38, and 48 years, were convicted of the slaughter of Cy Hensley. The death of Hensley was the termination of a justice's trial in Jackson County. Pleading for the pardon of her husband, who is serving a 4-year sentence for the murder of her brother, Mrs. James Ramsey, holding in her arms the 2 youngest of the 7 children of the prisoner in whose cause she appeared Monday, made a strong appeal to Governor Hooper to grant clemency to the man sent up from Jackson County for the killing of Silas Hensley. Accompanying Mrs. James Ramsey was her sister-in-law, Mrs. Lloyd Ramsey, who was also working for the pardon of her husband and the brother of James, and convicted of the same offense. She too had 2 small children with her. A badly decomposed body of a white man was found in the Cumberland River at the rear of J.B. Ransom's sawmill in West Nashville Thursday afternoon. It is believed that the body was that of Jim Ramsey, a convict who disappeared on March 21st along with Morton Temple, another convict. The convicts, who were trustees, were employed at the prison pumping station, and when last seen were making their way across the river in a little launch which the state keeps at the station. The river was high and the driftwood was frequent, and it is almost certain that the boat was overturned and the men drowned. Ramsey had great hopes of soon receiving a pardon, his brother having already been pardoned by Governor Hooper in connection to the same offense. Ramsey was sent up from Jackson County for 4 years for murder, having been engaged in a historical battle with the Hensley family. He had about 2 years yet to serve. His brother Jesse was recently pardoned, brother Lloyd being still in the penitentiary. December 24th, 1911. The Christmas list of pardons recalls 2 noted murder cases. James Ramsey, implicated in the Ramsey-Hensley-Jackson County feud, is to go free. In February 1909, a heated dispute on Jimmy Randolph Ramsey's porch led to violence and a local trial. Afterward, Jimmy and Almedia Frances Hensley Ramsey established a farm near Blackburn's Fork, raised 10 children together, and became active in the Shiloh Church. Over time, relations with the Hensley family thawed, and the feud faded into memory. Jimmy died in 1946 at age 77. Almedia passed in 1950 at age 68. Both are buried in the Fox Chaffin Cemetery, and their descendants still farm in the area.